was born in a day where my father had a match. My daughter was born when I had a match, and my son was born when I had a match. That's been my life. There are many ways to be or not to be. In my case, to be. In other cases, of not to be. You have many examples of people with apparently all the conditions to be, and then in the end they are not. Without one area of the formation, you are not complete. And I used to divide it in three parts. One is the academic formation. One is your experience and your understanding of the game that comes from the experience you had in the game. So I think people that they were big football players, they have this part that I think is also very, very important. And the third part is your talent. That doesn't come from the formation, is your talent. It's like the School of Arts, for example. You know, person can go to the best School of Arts, but then if you are not meant to be, you are not going to be. And that's for me the most important part of it. Is in your blood, is genetic, is in your DNA. Do you have the talent or you don't have the talent? My father was a player until I was probably 9, 10, and then became a manager. So when he was a manager and I was on my 12, 13, 14, I was going into his world, and the kind of discussion I was having with him, the kind of little jobs he was giving me in a generation where the coaching staffs were not like today, and at that time was about the manager and probably one assistant, and that's it. And when I was doing a position analyze, when I was analyzing his own team, when I was giving him my reports, I think we both understood at the same time. He understood that I was that, and I understood also that I had a much more potential to be a football coach than to be a football player, which was what at that time every kid of my age in love with football wanted to be. I think, especially in Portugal, because it is a social environment that more or less I can control. I can say there is a pre-Jose and after Jose. After my success in abroad, starts a new generation of young people that they want to be football managers. But before that, on the 70s, on the 80s, everybody wants to be a player, and I was a case of that. But I understood that my talent, it was on the other side of the game. My coaching course was 3 years of sports science, but after that, 2 years of football methodology. Because sometimes the sports science take us into a direction where is sometimes difficult to understand if it is sports or if it is science. And football will be always a sport, at least for my perspective. It was really important for me, and was kind of a new way to prepare yourself to be a football manager. The incredible thing was that because I was working in a club before Porto, Leiria, of course, I was working with a club with not the financial potential to think big, to buy big, and to scout in the top let's say, places, I was really aware of lots of young talent in smaller teams. We were not afraid to change completely the direction of Porto by getting the best young players in the smaller clubs in Portugal. We didn't get one single player by millions or coming from top clubs. Everybody was young, was angry, had big motivation, had big desire. And when I start working with them in the next pre-season, I answered immediately to a few question marks that I had, which was their psychological dimension to adapt to a different reality and to cope with that pressure, to cope with that responsibility, to come from a smaller team to one of the big clubs in Portugal. Sometimes you have to be also lucky, because you can scout and scout and scout, and I know that in this moment there are many complex structures of scouting, and then sometimes complex doesn't mean efficient, but if you use that complexity to try to be efficient, I think yes, you have to analyze that side of the players the best you can, for not to have the kind of surprises that sometimes people has, even after investing a lot, and then you have surprises when you are facing a profile of player that you are not expecting to. I remember that my question mark at that time was how that group of players were going to face the atmosphere of an European final, and I was trying to analyze it since the moment we land in Sevilla, with everything around the final that was there. I played an European final before that, when I was in Barcelona, and only my Portugal keeper that was also with me in Barcelona at that time had that experience of playing an European final. And everything around when you land, the hotel, the people, the number of fans, the crazy atmosphere in the city, the opposite fans. Let's see how these guys are going to react. I felt them reacting in the best possible way. And I felt that win or not win, you cannot control, but you can control the way you are going to play. You are going to pace the final. I understood immediately that the boys were ready. We were winning 1-0 and they equalized, and then we were winning 2-1, and then they equalize again, and then you go to extra time, and it's hard. Even for us from the outside is really hard, because a final is, in the majority of the career, especially when you are in Portugal, you think that probably is now or never. You think that is a unique occasion. We were far to imagine that 12 months later we were all playing a Champions League final. So we look to that match as that's the match of our life. That's the match of our career. We can take an European Cup to our country and to our careers, and even our careers, if you want to think about yourself, can explode with that achievement. And we were there. We were there for that. I also feel that Celtic was, and I felt that during the game. They also were there to win it. That's why it was an absolutely fantastic final. So many years after, I tell the same. Sometimes the best investment that you can do is to keep your best players. So when even now people speaks about that club spent X millions buying, and that team didn't buy anyone, I always say, who did they sell? They didn't sell anybody. So they kept all the top players they have. So that's the best investment. And in Porto that season, everybody stayed. So Deco, Ricardo Carvalho, Paulo Ferreira, Valente, Maniche, everybody stayed from one season to the next. And then was just a question to resync the team, especially for that jump from Europa League to Champions League, because in the Champions League, of course, we know we are going to play against the best teams. Europa League at that time, UEFA Cup was a different competition, and we just had to give that step. But that step was also based on the experience and the know-how of the team. So that team was playing in Sevilla the final. A few months later, we were playing in the Champions League group phase, and that was just such a smooth transition. The main changes was that in the UEFA Cup we consider ourselves one of the best teams, and in the Champions League we were not one of the best teams. So when in the Champions League group phase we get immediately Real Madrid in our group, and then in the first knockout Manchester United. In UEFA Cup our group phase was a team from Poland, a Turkish team, then Izlispor, and then we get Lazio and Celtic, but the Champions League is the Champions League. So we know that we are not the best team, and we need to reformulate a little bit our way of seeing the game, because many people think that talent is the only way to win football matches, but there is also the strategic side of the game, and sometimes you need that. Maybe one day I tell everything about my career. Maybe I never tell, but the night before that game, so without knowing what was going to happen, I was in the hotel in Manchester before the game, and I had one agent to take me to another hotel to meet the CEO of a big English club, not the club that I moved for. Was not Chelsea. So I had the doors open even before that. Then obviously you do that, you win the Champions League, makes it obviously different times, because at that time I remember that 2004-05, only two managers from abroad come to England, and was the Champions League winner and the UEFA Cup winner was me and Benitez. Different periods. Now is so much easier to come. At that time was really difficult.